What up, Best Self Squad? Welcome back to the podcast. For those of you who don't know, the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and experiences that will hopefully help you move that dial towards becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you. So this week we have my coworker, heavy lifter, nutritionist, fitness coach, personal trainer, Ryan Zingsheim. Welcome to the podcast.
What's going on? Thank you.
Good to have you.
It's good to be here.
So you're someone who you've been a coach for a long time. You have a vast variety of like expertise in different components of health, I guess we'll just call it. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make who like they're just coming in for the first time, whether they've been trying to go like just go to the gym or they're completely like fresh off the not doing anything section of life? Like what are some of the biggest mistakes you see the average person make who doesn't have a coach?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is thinking you have to kind of do everything at once, biting off more than you can chew. I need to start going to the gym 4 days a week. I need to eat more protein, eat more or drink more water, get more sleep. It's like that's a lot of shit to do at once. So trying to pick like one or two goals, focus on those, master those, and then kind of move on from there. And usually some of those other goals follow along with that. With coming to the gym more, you're probably getting better sleep, probably more thirsty, you're going to drink more water and stuff like that. So it's a trickle down effect.
Yeah.
Doing too much at once.
This is something, so I got told this for like entrepreneurship, but I feel like it applies as much, if not more so, for health and fitness. I was told the first part is knowing that there are like 100 doors you can take, but the more important part is knowing which 99 doors not to walk through. So I think with health and fitness, like now, probably a good portion of you people listening or watching, because it's on YouTube, like they've gotten at least somewhat into the health and fitness space. But I think that's such a good thing to recognize is it's so easy when you're trying to get into it that there's the, to very much like boil it down, there's like the physical fitness, the nutrition, the rest and recovery, but then there's so many like branches of those tree trunks. And it's understanding like what will make an impact now that you can just like take action on right away and do that one thing. Because it's so easy, like if you just talk about, don't necessarily worry about the nutrition right away, don't necessarily worry about all that other stuff right away, like get 2 to 3 workouts in a week. And it's so much more like realistic, and it helps you build that track record with yourself. Because that's something early on, I was the coach who was like, all right, for fitness, we're going to get you moving this many days a week, and nutrition, this is what we want to focus on. And I would lose people like 3 weeks in.
Yep.
And you start to realize, yeah, like you talked about, like having one thing to focus on and get yourself to the point where it becomes somewhat habitual and automated, and then focus on the next thing. What have you found to be the, I guess, on average, like best first thing to focus on?
Well, kind of boiling down from what you said, because I deal with mostly people that come through the doors, so they're already in the gym. But one thing to do to kind of build up to that is get yourself just going on a walk more. Because a lot of time people are scared to come to the gym. So that's something that you can do with your friends, family, alone. So building that consistency. Okay, I'm walking 2 to 3 times a week. I'm walking 3 to 4 times a week. And then, all right, now I'm feeling a little better. Maybe let's go try a gym or something like that. So I think that's a great kind of first step. And you can do that. Let's eat more vegetables with every meal. Let's eat more protein. Choose kind of one simple thing that's in the confine and safety of your home. And then you can kind of branch out and get to the gym from there.
So one thing I'm curious about, because you obviously, you just know a lot about a lot when it comes to this stuff. One thing in particular is nutrition. So you are in the camp of, you know, everything that you need to know about like caloric intake, macronutrients, you know, the quantifiable aspects of it, but you're also in the camp of like, don't tell yourself you can't eat cookies.
Yeah.
So how do you find the balance between, Because I think inherently when people start like tracking their calories and tracking their macros, they tend to get very serious about like limiting certain things. How do you, and like you personally, and then with your clients, how do you find that balance between making sure that you're hitting your numbers, but also not like intentionally restricting certain things from your diet?
Yeah, it's kind of tough, and it's taken a lot of years of working on it. I'm still trying to learn and be on point of staying in that middle ground where I'm getting people results and stuff, but also not kind of messing with their emotional state or any bad relationship with food or the gym. It kind of comes down to like, I know what to eat, and I've tracked every now and again. I've plugged some of my main go-to meals in just to see, okay, these fit. I think it's super tedious and I don't like it. Some people love it. Great for them. It's just not for me or a lot of people. So once you get that basic foundation of what you're having and an idea of what it is, pretty set with that. And then allowing yourself, I love Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah, buddy.
Like, I'll get them at least once a week, whether I'm at the grocery store, just in that box right by the cashier, take a Reese's one, or I'll grab a bag or something like that. And that'll keep me in check usually, for getting my sweet tooth fix or something like that. And I know I base it off of how I feel and how I'm performing in the gym than what the scale says.
Yeah.
Because I know I've hit, it was like 3 weeks ago, I hit a new deadlift PR, a new squat PR, and I'm like feeling amazing. I'm like, all right, it's the first time in like 2 months, let's go hop on the scale. Lo and behold, I'm down in muscle and up in body fat. Not by a lot, but I'm like, well, shit.
Yeah. That on my own podcast, I'm the one interrupting it.
Oh my God.
It's a toll-free call. But no, and I think that's huge. So for me, like, I do think a lot of this stuff comes down to your, I want to say personality blueprint. There's obviously stuff that everyone can refine, but like for me, as you know, like right now I'm in season. So there are like races I prep for. And when I'm in training camp for those, I tend to get a lot more strict on the meals, but that's kind of, it's weird. Like I want to be more strict. It's not like I'm doing it out of a sense of obligation. It's, I want to see if I really just like flip the switch in my head and go into robot mode, how deadly of a weapon can I turn myself into for that race or that event. But then as soon as the race is done, I'll intentionally just go off the rails and eat whatever I want for like a week or two. And then I kind of find that equilibrium again. And so that's what works for me. And I'm able to stay relatively, like if we talk about metrics like body fat, muscle mass, things like that, I'm able to still stay relatively in the same range. But that may not work for somebody else. For somebody else, it could be just on a daily or weekly basis, this is what feels good. And I'm just going to like stick to the process of that. So that's one thing I think is super important, is almost having that trial and error period and giving yourself the grace just to figure out like what works and then what's actually enjoyable. Because if both of those components aren't there, it's not going to stick.
Yeah. I say that's the biggest thing, or the biggest problem with restricting food for a lot of people is once they go back to eating, they tend to binge eat. Whatever it is. I've tried that with my Reese's peanut butter cups. I've tried to cut it out for a month or whatever, and I do get the results. The results are there, but I was like, I'm gonna go back. Now I'm getting a bag of peanut butter cups.
Yeah, coming home with the failing
some
pack.
Oreos and a pint of Ben and Jerry's, and I'm slamming that down.
Yeah.
Like in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing myself to like have that, to not feel guilty or anything about that throughout the week, is more sustainable for me. But again, restricting food, if your goal is more like aesthetic, like competing and stuff, there is definitely science to it. It's just, it's not sustainable for long periods of time. So I think if people have that understanding that this isn't going to last forever, and I need to go back to some point to having a more balanced diet, that would be best.
Yeah. So one thing that I heard I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but there's a guy named Alex Formosi.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if you haven't seen him, just Google him. Like he's in shape, for the lack of a better term.
He
But
actually used to work with Joey through Gym Launch here
oh yeah,
a while back. Yep.
yes,
I know they both parted ways from that, but yeah.
yeah. So he essentially talks about like the napkin calculations for nutrition, where he knows he's looking just to be in maintenance. So there's caloric deficit, caloric surplus, and then maintenance. And he talks about, for people who are in maintenance, I mean, for any of them really, you just figure out like what's your caloric intake for the day, and then how much protein do you need to keep the muscle you want on, and everything else he talks about. Like he'll eat Oreos, he'll eat ice cream, he'll eat pizza, but if it stays within the caloric limits and hits the macros he wants to hit, he's able to still look pretty freaking ripped,
Yeah.
while allowing himself to eat those things. Now, when it comes to people who are looking to lose weight, do you find that it is more important what's filling those calories, or is it still, are you like calories in, calories out, or what's your approach when you shift towards people who really are looking to like lose body fat, lose weight, and slim down?
Yeah. So calories and nutrition, calories and protein are king. So making sure you're in a calorie deficit, but not too big of a one. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. But then protein, getting like 0.7 to 1 grams per pound is usually the standard for hitting. Because you're eating less calories, you're going to want to try to hold on to that muscle, so you need more protein. And then it goes filling carbs and fat really with what you prefer. There are some numbers for like fat. It's like 0.3 to 1 grams per pound. And then fill the rest in with carbs, whatever that is, but you can split it however it's going to work for you. But try not to like have all carbs and no fats, and vice versa.
Why?
Again, it's just your body doesn't necessarily, and don't take this the wrong way, need carbs. Definitely have carbs, but your body needs protein and fat. Carbs will provide that extra energy and stuff for you. So if you get rid of fat completely, it's probably not going to bode too well.
Yeah.
In the long term. In the short term, you might be okay, but
well, and that affects like cognitive function, doesn't it? If you don't get enough healthy fats.
There's a lot more things going on inside your body than the external of how you look. That is way more important, and cognitive function is up there.
Yeah.
Importance.
Okay, so that's the nutrition portion. Then for fitness, let's say someone like they check the first couple steps in like the intro to movement, where they're getting out, they're getting their steps in. Now they really want to get into the gym and like get well-rounded fitness. Because I mean, you have, I don't even know how many certifications at this point, but like you know a very good amount about the different movement patterns and the different splits that different people could perform to get a well-rounded level of athleticism between like strength, mobility, all of the different athletic categories. For someone who is coming in, what are the most important things that you think someone should focus on who's getting, let's say they're coming into the gym 3 days a week? What should that person put into their program?
I would add 3 kind of main components. Lift some weights. Doesn't have to be crazy amount at the starts. Over time, you do want to apply like progressive overload, but just start with some weights for 2 days and then add a day of cardio in as well. And with all 3 of those, whether it's starting, implementing throughout the workout, or at the end, do something that you truly enjoy and love. A lot of time for guys is, let's just get a wicked arm pump at the end or something, or a butt pump or an ab pump, something that you're going to go out of the gym and feel good about walking out.
Yep.
Clients usually remember the first part of the workout and the last part of the workout. Anything in the middle, it's kind of a gray area, still is beneficial, but they're going to remember how it started and how it ended. So giving them something to leave on a high note with is really important. But lifting weights, in terms of health and longevity is a big component, but you also, your heart's a muscle too. So you got to train that and the whole cardiovascular system.
Everyone's favorite thing.
Yeah. I need to take my own advice on it.
Yeah. So you've got just pick up some heavy things, put them back down. Now, one thing I actually am really curious your take on is something I heard recently was, I don't remember this guy's name, but he was on another health podcast where he was talking about with his clients, he doesn't worry as much about weight as practicing the movement under resistance. So he'll tell his clients, don't like bench press, like go practice benching so that they focus on the actual form and muscle activation over how much weight they're throwing around. Is that something, because you've talked about that pyramid of progression when it comes to like squats and hinges and things like that. How important is that to you where it's like, get the muscle activation and the technique down before you even think about how much weight you're throwing around?
And through my own experience with hurting myself, form matters. Making sure you're getting your body properly warmed up for specific movements, but then making sure that form is good before you put your body under any sort of load.
Yeah.
And I like the phrase, it's just make lightweight feel heavy. So even I could sit here and engage my lats, and after about a minute, my lats would start fatiguing. But I've taken a lot of time working on that. But that's where the real gains are made, is you get your form down, everything's working how it should. You're going to avoid any potential risk of injury, barring some crazy thing. And then over time, you load that up, you load that up, you load that up. And if maybe if you're doing like 5 sets of bench press, 4 sets look good, that 5th set, you put on a little more weight and your form starts going to shit. All right, let's load it back down. Let's work on there. Maybe let's try a couple more reps than we did last time.
Yeah.
And over time, just kind of building up. There's nothing wrong with lifting light weights. Sometimes I like to go and I'll get my 5-pound dumbbells and do lateral raises and stuff just to let people know that it's okay, because I'm one of the biggest guys in this gym, at least. So I think it's nice for people to see that I'm lifting lightweight as well.
Yeah.
And that burns.
So there's 2 things that I want to touch on. The first one is like going back to warming up. I thought I was warming up effectively. And then we had our trainer workshop where you ran us through really some of the best ways to just like get your chest, your back, different things loosened up. And since I've started doing that, I'm not like a power lifter by any means. Anyone looking at me can see that, but I enjoy the weightlifting side of training. And that has exponentially increased since I've just like added the little bit of like foam rolling warm-ups you've done and things like that. So usually I wait till the end, but let people know your Instagram, because I know you put a lot of that content in there.
Yeah, it's at Rising Fitness. That's RYZNG Fitness on Instagram. I was doing really good posting videos every week for a while there. It's still there. I'm working on getting back to it.
They'll take a while to catch up with the content, but no, and that is such an important thing. Like, so warming up effectively, like for me, again, I knew get the muscles activated, make sure your body's waking up to the fact that it's about to start, doing some intense stuff. But the other part too is ego can play such a big role in the gym. And like, so that's something as a coach, the fact that I still need a coach heavily involves letting go of ego. And that's something I think as coaches, every coach still needs a coach. And to just be willing to admit that is one thing. But then on the athlete side of things, once people really start getting into the gym, I think it's tough for someone to go back down in weight, or like someone who is known for being strong or being big, to grab those 10s or 15s and do some reps with that is such an ego gut punch that like they just don't want to deal with the lack of pride they'll experience when foregoing like slamming down some heavy weights. And that's something like you can't go into the gym with a toxic amount of ego. Yeah, there's like the confidence, like if you're trying to like throw like a 1 rep max or something, then you gotta like be like, oh yeah, I'm shit, I can lift this all day, lightweight. But when it comes to just fitness as a whole, that's such an important aspect to me, is I call it like white belt mentality, like going in just solely focused on getting better and not caring about like what you look like or worrying about people judging you for having lighter weights. Because if you're the one willing to pick up the light weights and do the work that you need to do, you're going to fly past people making snap judgments about that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Again, focusing on what you have to do and not worrying about anybody else. That goes for yourself and everyone. Because there's a lot of toxic ego in the gym. Slowly getting better at that, but it's always, I think, going to be prevalent. But I think when it comes to at least coaching and articulating that to my clients, it's just finding the right words to say and how to say it. Like explain, like doing it this way, like you're going to get, there's potential risk for injury a lot higher than normal. I think I like to kind of joke around with a smile, like, hey, let's try it this way, or I found this new way to do this. And realistically, it's just the right way to do it. They're just not doing it right. But making them think like, oh, this way might be better. And I'm like, oh, how did that feel? And 99.9% of the time, it feels better.
Yeah.
And then we build the strength there and go up.
Your clients are going to see this and be like, he's been playing me this whole time.
Well, I've had some learning experience with myself and my clients.
Yeah.
I know one of my clients, Dan, the first time in here, Jake's is just like, yeah, he's just looking to get huge, lose some weight, just go in there and fuck him up. I'm like, all right, say less, I got this. And I did just that, but I ended up hurting his shoulder right away. And then I kind of was like, okay, I need to chill out a bit or whatever. And now 3 years later, he's still training with me 3 times a week. He's the best he's ever looked. And we took a step back. He let his ego go. I let my ego go. And he hasn't been injured, knock on wood, since, and he keeps hitting PRs monthly.
Dang.
Which is pretty crazy.
So we're going to get into me asking stuff just because I'm a curious person. What is one of the main lessons you've learned as a coach that you've been able to apply as an athlete?
That's a good question.
Hey, thanks. Or even just like one thing you've learned as a coach that you've been able to apply like to life, or like was a life lesson that was provided through being a personal trainer.
I think too, like we all have kind of our own biases for working out and stuff. And a lot of time, especially starting off, I didn't go for school for this. I was new. So I was in the kind of mindset of fake it till you make it. I knew how to work out and I was still strong. So I put a lot of my clients through just exactly what I was doing. And it's not a one size fits all. So it's what's best for that client in front of you at that moment. And then kind of after 2 years of training here, then tearing my shoulder and my bicep, kind of looking back at that, like I'm just doing the traditional lifts that I've seen people do. I've read the bodybuilding books and stuff, but those aren't the best for me either. I specifically tore my shoulder flying through the air doing some ninja training, but it would have happened
at Legendary, right?
At Legendary. Yep. Although it would have happened at some point, whether it was the next day, week, or month, because I was just doing dumb shit, lifting, trying to go as heavy as I can under the main lifts with bad form. For example, I used to call deadlifts back snaps. Yeah, I would continue to do them. My back would just kill me every time, and I just had terrible form. But I'm just trying to keep loading up the weight.
Yep.
But now I've taken steps back. I've done other things to build up strength and intention there, and then go back to deadlift. And now it's one of my favorite moves and my strongest move.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the whole like personality blueprint, right? There's the things that work best for you just because of what you enjoy and what you'll stick with, but also just based on like how your body does move and how your body does react to different lifts and exercises and things like that. There are certain things that you may want to do that just won't, like you can do them for the fun of it, but they won't actually reap the benefit you're looking for. And then there are things that you may not particularly enjoy doing, but I call that eating your vegetables. Like you got to eat your vegetables if you want to get the benefit. And I think that's so important for people to realize. Like, I think about a lot of things in terms of like a Venn diagram. I'm still a second grader at heart. You always want to aim for like the both. So what is both enjoyable and effective? And then from there, if you need to branch out a little bit into like just the singular aspects of that, go for it. But the more you can combine those, the easier it's going to be to stick with, because you like what you're doing and you're getting the result you want from doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think it's important, especially for on the coaching aspect, but you can even do it with yourself, is having that interaction of what's your favorite exercises, what you love to do most, and what's your least favorites. But I always, with an asterisk, like, yeah, sure, running, burpees, split squats, they all suck. But I'm like, truly, if you come into the gym and I tell you that we're doing overhead shoulder press and that just is going to ruin your mood, well, guess what? We're not going to do that. It's a big component of just training the movement patterns, like squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry, rotate. And under each of those categories, there's thousands of different variations of exercises. So you don't have to do just the one.
Yeah.
From a coach, or if you're applying that to yourself, then you may have to do a little bit of research and digging to see kind of what there is to do. But knowing that you don't have to barbell back squat, we can float it up in front. We can do TRX squats. We can do a whole bunch of other things. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're more likely to say, I'm out. At some point, you're going to burn out, and you're probably then going to add stress to the equation and other things that are just going to stump your results as well. So finding something you love to do is the key.
So that's actually, I have an interesting take on this. So I'm a believer in, and I just like put this on my story, like fitness should be a party, not a punishment. But then the contradicting belief for me is there is something to be said about doing really hard shit.
For sure.
And so like, that's something I do with my clients, is not often, but every once in a while, like their workout, like probably my favorite is they'll come in and I'll have the sled and I'll just have like a 25-pound weight on there and then a stack of 10s, and they'll push it out and back, put on a 10, push it out and back, put on a 10, and they go till like they just can't push it, and then they take off 10, push it down and back. But I always preface it, like I'm not just gonna like throw someone in there without telling them my reasoning for doing something like that. I always tell my clients, if you can do hard things in a controlled setting and take the lesson from the accomplishment of doing hard things, then when an uncontrolled setting gets thrown at you and you have adversity, you have a challenge, you know your toughness capacity and your like ability to sit in the discomfort of something that's going on and handle it. But I think if you're just like making people do hard shit and like there is no rhyme or reason, and on top of that, I think that has to be very acute. Like the majority should be stuff that they're enjoying, they're seeing the benefit of. Because if every day they come in and there's just that sled sitting there, they're gonna be like, why am I here? Like what are we doing? But
well, a couple things based off that. So again, it's kind of towards like the end of the workout, getting that pump or whatever. And some people, they just want their ass kicked. So doing that would be perfect for that. But that also leads into, again, once you kind of get in the gym and start focusing on things, one of the biggest mistakes I'd say people do that kind of leaves them stagnant in results or anything is their intensity level, which sucks to hear. It sucks overall. It's hard. But you got to start ramping up, whether that's doing more reps, doing heavier weights, going harder, going faster, and you got to push it. Because your brain is a muscle too. You got to train that. I know Justin likes to say mental fortitude. And it's crazy grabbing 80-pound dumbbells and doing 10 split squats is like, that sucks. But the amount of just insane greatness I feel after doing that is untouchable, in my opinion. You don't have to be doing crazy stuff like that, but the harder you push yourself, the better off you'll feel after that workout.
Well, I think at least for something like working out, I think intensity comes with intention. Like if you're just going in the gym to go into the gym and check the box, like, okay, I got my workout in, there's really not much of it like an intention behind that aside from your participation award. But if you're showing up really thinking about, this is how I want to get better, this is like the intention behind each exercise that we're doing, there's that focus. I think that inherently adds a level of intensity because you're not just kind of like wandering aimlessly through your workout. You're really dialed in and present to every component of what you're doing. But also, like, yeah, the physical, you just need to be willing to, I think discomfort, again, you need to be able to not shy away from a very temporary discomfort that like realistically lasts 5 seconds to 20 seconds. If you can't sit with that, then like very bluntly speaking, you probably will not get the results you want because you're not doing what's required and meeting the prereqs to achieve that level that you want to achieve.
Yeah. And I think that's where having a coach or at least a workout partner, essentially that's what a coach is a knowledgeable, glorified workout partner. But having someone there to challenge you and push you, it's probably one of my favorite things as a coach. It makes me feel good just empowering my clients, like Sharon. She's in her 60s. She's constantly telling me, you're crazy, I'm not going to lift that or whatever. And then she's incline dumbbell bench pressing 50-pound dumbbells and supersetting that with a 70-pound dumbbell row for reps. It's like, I told you so. And it feels so good. And they feel good too, because they set that wall of, I can't do this. That's too hard, or I'm not strong enough. But then time and time again, kind of proving them wrong, but in the best way.
Yeah, that it's so crazy to me. I mean, we're very fortunate that our job, I think, shines a light on a lot of standard human traits that we can then expose and dissect. And that, I think one of them is like just baseline limiting beliefs. And it's so easy to let that negative voice in your head or that limiting voice in your head win out. But if you're just willing to, I guess the way I view it is, if that voice in my head is telling me I can't do it, okay, let's see if it's right. Like, let's just show up, give it 100% and try to prove it wrong. And at the end of the day, like if I can't do it, I'll own that, but I'm not just going to not try because a small part of me has some fear around whether or not I can do it. So I think that's huge, but yeah, just getting the opportunity to be that soundboard for people is such a cool experience because you're really not telling them anything they don't know. You're basically just in a very empowering way telling them to like shut up that inner voice.
Yeah. And it's like kind of funny, but not funny either, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll be like, I can't do that. And then they'll be like, straight up, I'm not doing that. And I have the patience and I'll sit there and I'll wait because really, I want you to at least try. If you truly can't do it, that's okay. We'll go on to something else or we'll make it, regress it a little bit, but you have to at least try. And without hesitation, most of the time, they go and try it right away. And again, 9 times out of 10, they can do it. Otherwise, we'll regress it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you tried. I've had to sit though for 10, 15 minutes and we just sat there at each other. It's like, I'm not budging though. Because if I give up, then that shows that it's okay for you to do it too. So I haven't had to deal with that since my first year here. And thankfully I did just hold solid to it. But again, trying is what matters.
Dude, that's powerful. Like the fact, I'm just thinking about like that actual situation because 10 minutes feels a lot longer than 10 minutes in a situation like that.
Time.
Yeah, dude, I want people listening, and I guarantee you when I look back at this, I'm going to listen to that a few times. Like, you didn't budge because that would show them it's okay for them to budge.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful statement. Like, that's shit. I got to find a way to make that the title of this video. Dude, that's so true. And like, I think for anyone listening too, obviously a coach is the best option. We are biased, but I say that as someone who pays other coaches in other areas of life, because it's essentially having an accountability partner who actually knows what they're talking about. But at base level, like find someone, a friend, a family member, whoever, who will, like Ryan did with his client, like they won't let you get away with not at least attempting what you and they know you need to. Because that's something, it's cool to have like yes men around you and people who will just like let you do what you want and say what you want. But having those people who will be like, no, you got to do it. Like you got to at least attempt it, because then you'll know and you can shut up that voice inside your head. I love that, dude. I don't know that I've ever had to employ something like that, but if that time ever comes, I'm gonna pull that out of my hat and just sit there and stare at them.
There you go.
I like it.
And kind of like with that a little bit, like, and it matches with intensity as well. Again, and I put it into context when you ask, like, when people kind of get stuck in the maintenance. And one of my questions is like, are you progressively overloading, but are you training sometimes to like failure? And I think with a lot of my clients, hearing the word failure, it's a negative word overall, but I'm like, this is the best kind of failure. I've gotten Dan, he's like, I'm a failure and I fucking love it. He embraced it. And that it's not a bad thing. You didn't fail. Like you're pushing yourself so hard enough that your muscles are just simply, they're shot, they're done, they're tired. And now you go get your nutrition and recovery in, and then they're going to grow back.
Yeah.
But like if we're doing bench press and I say last set till failure, then they feel like, oh, I only did 20 reps. Well, we were just doing 4 sets of 10. 20 reps is great. I don't care if you did 1 rep and failed, but it's trying to make them know that it's not always a bad word.
Yeah, no, that's something. I mean, even just this week, I was doing drop sets till failure with some of my clients, and I always give them crap. If any of you are watching, you know who you are. I give them crap because I'll say till failure, and then they'll crank out a good amount of reps. But let's say we're doing bench, they'll get it all the way up, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm done," and they re-rack. I'm like, that wasn't till failure. You just succeeded at that last rep. Like, let's keep going. I'm like, I'm spotting you. You're fine. Like you'll be okay. But yeah, you're right. There's something about like people don't like staring into that abyss, and it really is like it's a scary feeling. I mean, especially like with weightlifting, there's that added element of like that bar is coming down if I don't get it up. But no, it's like with anything, that word in general, though, to me, I am very lucky that very early on, like I'd say probably in like my late teens was when it really got ingrained in me. Like failure it's not a bad word. And more often than not, people who are consistently pushing till failure are going to be the ones who are progressing at an infinitely higher rate than people who are trying to stay within that comfort level.
Yeah. So I'll preface this first, like, unless your form's going to complete hell, that doesn't apply to them. Then stop. But usually your mind is going to tell you, wow, this hurts in a good way. I'm done. And then that's it. So you got to kind of push past that. I say, you're going to think about it once, you're going to think about it twice. Then that third time you think you're done, you're probably done. First time around, tell your brain to shut the fuck up. Close your eyes, do whatever you got to do, have a conversation, and just try to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And sometimes like I try to give them a number that's realistic, yet pretty outlandish. So they have that to achieve. But I also say, if you get there though, I want you to keep going. Like if we're doing barbell bench press and for whatever reason, I'll say, all right, just you need a number, aim for 50. Knowing damn well they're going to fail at 17 or something. But at least they're going to have that number to push towards.
Yeah.
But I found that's tricky is like, oh, now I didn't get to 50. He said do 50. It's like, shit, I am a failure. It's like, well, that defeats the purpose mentally. Physically, we did great. But mentally now it's like, so I'm still playing around with how to get around that.
There's a lot of mental jujitsu that goes into.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But I mean, that's the same, like as a coach, again, we see it on a different level because we're working with so many different people with different backgrounds and personalities. And triggers among many other things. But even on a personal level, I think it's so important to like take notice of how you respond to different cues and different styles of like how you talk to yourself. So like for me, when I'm in training camp, like I love that like warrior mentality. So I don't know if you notice this or not, but like in peak week of my training, I'd oftentimes even like come into the gym with headphones on. I'd look down because I was like, if you even look at me wrong, I will fuck you up right now. I was like, I was in like total like game time mode, almost like I listen to a lot of motivational talks. Like when Kobe Bryant was like, don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't think about me. It was like that was just like on repeat. And that works so effectively because it allows me to show up with that intensity that we were talking about. But then as soon as that's done, I have no problem going back into my typical like happy go lucky, shoot people with squirt guns at work, hang out, give high fives. Like, and so it comes back again to what's going to work well for that person. And so if telling someone, all right, shoot for 50 reps and they make it to 17 is motivating to them, awesome. But if they're the kind of person who, like you said, like if you say 50 and they get to 17 and that just like kills them, maybe that's not the approach.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And it's so cool to have that ability to get so good at that mental jujitsu, as long as coaches we're showing up with our own intention of figuring out what makes that person tick.
Yeah. And part of it too is most of my clients, we've been training for 2, 3, 4 years. So we've built that relationship, but even if it's just a first time client, building a relationship from the start and stuff. So you can kind of figure out what works and stuff like that. Know if you say that it's not going to work too well. But also just kind of, I'd probably say this to all my clients, like, oh, I'm just going to test something out on you. You're my guinea pig or something. But I've built that relationship and they trust me enough to be like, okay, usually this works out. Sometimes it doesn't, but I'm not putting them in a way that I'm going to hurt them. But now you build that trust factor. So at least when that does happen, it doesn't hurt as much, I guess. Like if my client didn't trust me and I tell her to get to 50 and she only got 17, she's probably going to take that a step further. Like let's say that's a level 2 out of 10 and feeling bad about yourself. If that relationship isn't there, maybe it's probably like a 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that relationship and trust between clients and even just with yourself too.
And I think about that on that personal level again. There's so many like parts of what we're talking about that correlate with other things that we're talking about. And I think about that, like building trust. You gotta build trust on the small things first so that you can ask the big things with that underlying trust down the road. And that same thing with yourself too. Like that's why I think it's so important with what we were talking about. Like start with one thing, like drink more water or increase the number of steps you're getting per day. That applies to all areas of life, like financial, relationships, health and fitness. If you're spiritual, like your spiritual practice, all those different areas of life, it's starting small and building that trust with yourself that when you say you're going to do something, you actually freaking do it. And then you can start asking the bigger things of yourself because you've built that foundation and you know that you're not going into it with any like self-induced animosity.
Yeah. It's kind of like that little meme of stick people going up a ladder to climb over a wall to a pit of gold or something. One person's got the typical ladder rungs that they're going, and one has one here, one way up here, and they're not going to it because they're trying to bite off more than they can do. So those small little steps, all of a sudden, it doesn't have to be gold, obviously. Whatever that is, that's at the end of the tunnel for you.
Yeah,
you're way more likely to get there.
True that.
I know, like a book I read, kind of building habits and behavior, or I guess I listen to books or podcasts in my car now, just to try to keep everything on point. I'm learning. It's Atomic Habits by James Clear. I don't know him or anything.
Awesome.
So this is a random plug for him, but
James, we're looking out for you.
But like if you take, it's called an anchor moment. So something that you do on a daily basis, like every morning I brush my teeth or something. Hopefully everyone does that.
Ideally, yeah.
Something you already do, and then you add a small new kind of thing attached to that, and then right away you reward yourself with that. So I kind of give an example, like, again, I eat dinner every night. Maybe I'm buying some crazy thing. So every night after I eat dinner, I go and make my protein smoothie for the morning. I put it in the fridge. Then I go watch my favorite TV show. And then over time, just continually doing that. Now that small new thing of making my protein smoothie is ingrained into that habit. And now I'm doing that without having to make dinner or something like that if I do miss it. So you can apply that to kind of anything. If you're taking a multivitamin for brushing your teeth, once I brush my teeth, I take my multivitamin, and then I don't know, I go have my coffee or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way to build those small things to make it consistency. So again, with all this stuff that we're talking about, it's just consistency is king.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I love about this talk, is there's so many ways around these very core topics, which is like, find the small things to start out, build up wins, stay consistent, show up with intention, and like be self-aware. So just, and a big part of that is like, I'm also, obviously I like podcasts, but I'm also big on, like, in the car, it's very rare that, unless I'm like with other people in the car, that I'm not about to just like pull up my audiobook that I'm listening to. But usually I'm listening to a podcast, listening to an audiobook, watching, like, if there's someone who I really enjoy the type of like content they put out, I'll watch it, not just to consume it for entertainment purposes, but to really like watch how they hit different angles and like how they use different aspects of the content creation side of things. And I think just that level of curiosity to keep learning and keep growing, both with external, so like learning about fitness, learning about finance, learning about all these other things, learning about just daily habits, but then also learning about yourself and how you respond to different people, different environments, different triggers, different, all of that stuff. If you're doing both the internal and the external continuous education, that's just like a runaway train for becoming your best self.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I think just staying curious always. And I like the phrase, what is it? The more you know, the less you know.
Yeah.
Because the more you know, then you realize that, wow, there's so much to know that I'm not going to know everything or whatever. So always just trying to have an open mind and trying to continually learn. It's going to improve your life, your friends and family, your clients, if you're a coach or whatever. And I've applied that since I did that pain-free performance certification 2 years ago or whatever now. And since then, like, I've just been on a just upward trajectory in my career. And so, yeah, I've started implementing just listening to audiobooks and podcasts and stuff. And it's kept me in this thing of I always wanting to learn, how can I be better for myself and my clients and my family and stuff like that. And honestly, it feels good. It keeps me motivated. And yeah.
When it's so cool, like, kind of briefly talking about the self-development space, and I want to be like conscious of your time because, you know, it's Friday, so it's the weekend. But when you move into the self-development space, one of my favorite things is when you learn something about yourself, the world becomes the perfect classroom. Because like you, especially like with something like Atomic Habits, you'll learn one of the habits and then you'll all of a sudden it's like when you buy a car and then you see that car everywhere. Now all of a sudden, like, you learn this new habit and you see like how other people are like going through their life, and you start to pick up on like, oh, that might be something I want to like turn into a habit, or, oh, that's something I do, and now that I saw someone else do it, I realized I better cut that shit out. Like, you start to really like, it's like you said, it's almost an endless cascade of you learn one thing and then it opens up the realm of possibility to so many more lessons. But I think with that quote that you were talking about, like the more you learn, the less you realize you actually know. That's so true. I think there's two ways to take it. I think the people who like, as they educate themselves, if there's an unnecessary amount of ego attached to that continued education, they're almost like, yeah, it turns into like a dangerous level of confidence to like cockiness almost. But if you're learning for the purity of learning and just showing up as that like revised, updated version of you, there is that sense of like, especially when it comes to books, I don't know if you feel this, but it seems like every book I add or every book I read at this point, there's like 8 to 10 books I add to my to read list. And so
long wish list.
yeah, so just understanding like you're never going to know it all. You're never going to probably even scratch the surface, but it's that endless pursuit and that infinite game that's attached to life itself that just makes it so much more exciting.
Yeah, it's knowing a lot and as much as you can, but staying curious, or it's knowing a lot and then thinking you know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of teeters on ego, and then you're kind of more or less just an asshole, honestly.
Yeah, right,
thinking you know
right.
everything.
Yeah.
And you might in a specific regard to something, but guess what?
Mm-hmm.
You're actually not going to know everything.
Yeah, I always make the joke, I know a lot about a little.
Yep.
But there's so much more out there.
Yeah, I say a lot to my clients all the time. It's like, yeah, I know a lot, but honestly, I don't know shit.
Mm-hmm. We're all just trying to figure it out, man.
Yep.
All right. So before I let you go, I've got one more question. What right now for you is the next step in you becoming your best self?
Me. Well, that's a good question. I've hit a point of like a super high point, but I think, well, I'm getting married next weekend.
Hey.
So really shifting more focus and attention that I apply learning in the gym to also just learning how to be a family man, if you will.
You read the 5 love languages yet?
That. Yep.
There you go.
She's all about that. So
as a single man, I don't put much into that basket, but that book is
knowing what your love language is key. And then once you have a partner, whoever that may be, knowing theirs is.
If you're out there, I'm open to it. But no, dude, I'm excited for you. Congrats, by the way. I didn't realize the wedding was that close. So
it came up kind of out of nowhere. Feels like July hasn't even happened yet.
Dude, yeah, it's flying. But I appreciate you coming on, taking the time, educating the people. I will make sure to put Rising Fitness Instagram in the like notes section or whatever it is. For everyone who made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm just going to run through the YouTube spiel. There's a like button. Go ahead and click that. There's a subscribe button. If you aren't already, go ahead and click that. And if you got any value out of this and you know someone else who could, which is any living being on the planet, go ahead and share it with that person. There's a share button. And then anything that you had questions about, comments on, that's why they have a comment section. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Definitely check out his information. There is a reason I've been hounding him for a while. The reason he hasn't come on is totally on me, but I've been talking to him for a long time about coming on. Super well educated, very diverse in his knowledge and his approach to helping people. So thank you for putting in the time to educate yourself. Thank you for what you do. And thank you everybody out there for listening. Keep tuning in. There will be a lot more guests coming down the pipeline. And until next time, eat your vegetables. Peace.